Rimworld is a prime example of a game that is a city builder, colony builder, management style game that took its attempt at being better than the others. Many have tried and many have failed at capturing the cult classic success of Dwarf Fortress. However, at this time, Rimworld is the most complete attempt at this. Now, starting out, you have 4 scenarios to choose from. Being crash-landed on a distant world, being exiled from a local tribe because of a storm, being a rich explorer, or waking up completely alone and naked and unsure where you are. The first thing you will notice about Rimworld is its graphics. It has warm and inviting colors, while also providing relatively decent amounts of depth and detail. People and animals have some sort of variation to one another, but not a ton. Everybody kind of blends together here and there. Additional options for characters or more color patterns for fur, for example, would have been interesting, but realistically speaking, totally unnecessary in the end as it doesn't affect gameplay. Overall, Rimworld has quality visuals and its overall theme and style blend very well together. Next is overall sound. The ambient sound effects are pretty minor, and this is a good thing, seeing as most of the time you will be listening to Rimworld's soundtrack, and it is quite good.
Oh, my shoulder!
Including an additional 13 tracks added by the royalty expansion, most of it is a mix of acoustic guitar and futuristic electronic style. It fits the theme very well of the game, and most of the tracks are great and also add a very good ambient sound. It's a good thing that there is no stupid background noise like other games throw in that just muddle the track. Now for the gameplay. Rimworld at its core is a colony management sim. Multiple pawns all having the potential of being assigned to different or even the same tasks as one another. The way you do this is with a work tab, assigning priorities for each task in relative to the others. Even at the top priority, some will take precedent over others, like mining for example almost always goes first. However, I couldn't help but notice that work tab looks an awful lot like Dwarf Therapist. However, this is not a bad thing, as Dwarf Therapist is an amazing tool. Next, the colony has to be built, assigning blueprints for what structures or sections must be cleared to build or live in. Myself, I normally build into mountains, seeing as they're more of a defensible position and have high levels of temperature insulation. More about that, areas and rooms have subsequent ambient temperatures, applying debuffs to colonists if not well handled, or can be used to create a walk-in freezer to prevent flesh or plant matter from spoiling. This can also be affected by your selection of climate. Some are very inhospitable while others are relatively simple. For example, some only allow growing crops during specific times of the year because of the heat, or the cold even. And that you can only grow within these very specific windows, while others may give your colonists a heat stroke or hypothermia and kill them. Once you have a base of operations, moving on to other tasks is next. Finding jobs for your colonists, like researching or producing finished or raw goods, for example. Plants can be grown to produce food, cash crops, or others that can be refined into a finished good altogether. Food production becomes your highest priority. Growing these said food crops or hunting wild animals to obtain the raw foods is then followed by a colonist with cooking assigned to create meals at a kitchen. Now, one thing to keep in mind is a lot of these raw goods, especially the flesh ones, all have a rot point based off of temperature. It's almost imperative that you keep these goods frozen, and once they are frozen, they don't rot. Colonists will not eat raw foods unless they have to, and if they do, the mood penalty will get you, and they will be penalized for eating a raw meal. Some of these meals take a meat or a vegetable, or if you want ones that are a little bit better, they require both, and they give your colonist a mood buff that may raise their mood a significant amount, but require more material. Additionally, colonists can be assigned to produce several finished goods. Weapons or clothing is a great example of this, of something you may produce. Other times, they may produce just a refined product like bricks, but not a finished product like previously mentioned. Later on, far more complicated goods can be produced, like implants for example. These implants can be used on your colonist or sold. Once installed on a colonist with a surgeon, they modify the relevant limbs or body parts and can greatly affect the colonist. For example, leg implants will make them run faster, or arm implants will make them perform hand actions or arm actions in general much faster, and this can include crafting goods or materials. This allows you to create some pretty insane colonists. I mean, some of these implants have modifiers that will make them run or craft significantly faster. Sometimes with a couple of them, will be over 100% faster. One of the benefits of this is you can have multiple implants that will give the same modifier. As long as you're not implanting the same limb more than once, they will stack. For example, the manipulation modifier, which is what pretty much every action uses, can be on multiple different types of implants and not just specifically hands or arms. This allows you to create some pretty insane colonists that will perform actions 2 to 3 times faster than stock. Now, all of these actions will affect the individual colonist's skill level, raising it when in use, and it will cause them to perform that same action faster and have a higher potential chance of creating a higher quality level item if quality level is applicable to the item at hand. At the higher end, leveling these skills is incredibly time consuming, and in some cases very difficult or impossible. For example, shooting. You can't just grind that skill. The way that skill leveling works is it's the amount of time a colonist spends doing the skill. Well, they can't just sit there and shoot. One of the major problems with this is how skills will slowly burn off and deteriorate when not in use. This is incredibly frustrating on skills that are difficult to level. Even worse is when colonists have bad skill level, they will create lower or bad quality items and also work at a much slower rate. This means leveling their skill to a higher level is almost required, and in some cases it is in order to craft an item or a building. Now, a major problem with the skill system is how inconsistent the skills are. Even at the highest rank, the colonists will still fail badly. The tooltip at max skill of 20 says there's very few in the world better than these people, but they can still do a really bad job at crafting an item or performing an action. For example, creating only a normal quality gun when they should be higher. This quality level heavily impacts the stats and the individual value of that gun. A prime example of the skill system not working is a colonist with shooting skill maxed and a high quality gun will still miss shots very regularly. You can inspect them and find their chance to hit is well over 70%, but it almost seems 50-50. Now, I never actually did the maths and counted the shots, but if you read the tooltip, this is supposed to be one of the best guys in the world at shooting, but yet he's missing all the time. No way. Pretty early on, you'll begin researching new technology, each one having a corresponding cost, researched by your colonists who will research at a rate dependent on your bench and your individual research skill of the colonists. Now, research applies a benefit or a penalty at the cost level based off of your starting conditions, your colony's tech level. The tribe will have 2 additional colonists over the crash landed 3, but will spend considerably more research points to acquire the same tech. This is terrible later on when the techs will take several days with 6 or more people researching to acquire. With the already relatively slow paced progression of research, this is a setback needing far more, means that the tribals are just not a good option to pick. it will take you ages to get a single tech done, and there's no way to bump your tech level later on. You are always stuck with it. Onto the colonist nuances. Each one comes with a biological age as well as an actual age, seeing as they could be in cryosleep for hundreds of years at a time. They also come with their own individual backstory and traits based off of their history and backstory. Some of these are great to have, like additional work speed and walk speed, whereas others, like abrasive, will cause them to create social fights between other colonists. Other times it can be seemingly random when they will fight, but both are relatively irritating. Sometimes your colonists will have a mental breakdown because of these traits or history. Other times it will be because of their mood as well. Some of these breakdowns can be execution worthy, like the pyromaniac who might get lucky enough just to burn down the whole colony. Now for the most part, these mental breakdowns are pretty minor, like hide in room or food binge. But sometimes they are a death sentence, especially if at the right time or the right event. Colonists can become lovers and share beds, but oddly enough, they can't have children? This stems into a bigger problem with Rimworld, as population overall is relatively low. A lot of the time, having people assigned to specifically one job is not a great idea until it's pretty late in the game, as you just need the manpower to finish everything, and these specialists will be needed to help elsewhere. This goes in line with the skills, with the way that they deteriorate, because your guy can't just do the one to maintain because he's too busy moving bricks. Now, the lower than desired population may be a design choice, as once you get to the very high levels of population, the game will slow down and stutter from time to time. Who knows, maybe it's a choice because of the game engine. Occasionally, random events will happen, anything from a crashed resource pod to a raider attack. Sometimes these raiders will attack your colony. You draft your colonists and have direct control over them and set up a defensive perimeter. Cover from things like trees or rocks play a big deal in protecting your colonists as well as the enemy. Now, most of the time, these events will be very minor and most of the time be beneficial, but this is both at seemingly random. Now, a major problem with the random nature of this is the effect of save scumming. Yes, at the start of the game, you can choose whether you want to be able to prevent yourself from loading or saving the game at any time, and this is an overall attempt to prevent save scumming because of the RNG nature of the game. But sometimes hard raids and low populations, you can't afford to lose anybody, and on these non-load and save anytime saves, it just seems like an unnecessary hard mode. Sometimes on a reload, anytime the sieges or raids would have happened will just turn into harmless drop pods, or raids from tribals will instead be a military company. It seems a little unfair. Now, that being said, the AI of the attackers is very abusable. As long as there is a clear path, they will take it, even if it's zigzagging through a kill zone you set up with turrets, mines, cover, and, IEDs. Oh, and I almost forgot. The, power short random event? Not a fan. Now, the story in Rimworld is relatively simple. It's basically just a scenario that you choose at the start, like I mentioned in the intro. There's not much other than that, then you're trying to get off the world for whatever reason. Now, there's included Steam Workshop support, which is great for user content and mods, and it also includes some additional scenarios to try out. The nice thing about this mod support is there's a lot of copyrighted content that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for being a mod. Overall, I quite enjoy Rimworld. I wish that it wasn't so RNG heavy, since it really promotes the save scumming, and honestly, steel in the late game can be very bothersome to come by outside of trading. But this is the most complete colony management game we have gotten so far. It has an excellent soundtrack, and its relatively simple gameplay can be very engaging from time to time, and I've personally dumped many hours into it. I would like better control over a very few things, like one of the main ones would be great to have an automatic livestock or butcher job to apply. I mean, there is a mod for that, and that's great, but realistically speaking, these aren't really that big of a deal. In the end, though, I very much recommend Rimworld. Still waiting for that Dwarf Fortress remake, though.